Hello again, my name's Toy. Welcome to the Red Riot channel. Today we'll talk about something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about how we can take the relationships that you would find in a regular ecology and apply that to the ecology that you see in your deck and the relationships that you'd find in there. I know that doesn't really make sense to most of you. To put it simply, every card in your deck has a relationship with every other card in your deck, and we can kind of take the template from nature and apply that to our deck, and we can see how those cards interact with each other and whether or not they gain benefit or lose benefit or just don't even care that the other card exists. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering the 5 primary relationship types that you can find in an ecology, and we'll then be checking that with cards in the universes system and seeing how those relationships relate and how that applies to us. If this seems like something really weird and it doesn't make a lot of sense, well then I'm sorry. That's kind of what we do here. We talk about some weird things and we see what we can learn, and we put things in a different perspective that sometimes makes it easier for people to understand. And if you find this video helpful, please hit that like and subscribe and join in, because we're going to be posting a lot more content and a lot more kind of weird UVS analysis stuff. And yeah, come check it out. So I'll go through each type of relationship one at a time, and then I will give you an in-game example of what that relationship could look like in a universe's environment, and then we'll kind of just talk about it really quickly, and at the end we'll do a big review and we'll just kind of cover it all one more time. So the parameters that we'll use to decide whether or not a card is healthy is going to be whether or not it can function in the way that it wants to function or that you want it to function. So for attacks, that usually means that its speed and its damage are increasing, or that it's gaining any other special effects that you may desire, or that a foundation or an asset is continuing to produce results or produce effects for you. So without dragging this on too much longer, here's relationship number 1. Predation. One wins, one loses. It's a predator relationship where one card is going to gain a benefit, where the other card is going to lose a benefit. A real simple example of a predatory relationship could be found between Despise All Evil and, well, really any committed foundation in your staging area. Despise All Evil says, during your turn, destroy a committed foundation. Your opponent commits one card in their staging area. So in order for Despise All Evil to be a healthy functioning card, it needs to constantly consume other foundations in your staging area. There is no benefit to the other foundations in your staging area. They're just getting purely consumed in order for Despise All Evil to function. Now this can be said about any card interaction that involves just straight consumption of a resource, specifically if that resource is something that stays in your staging area. Another example of a predatory relationship can be found between Resurrected Revenant and any of its characters that can run it. Resurrected Revenant will seal a character to tutor any foundation out of its discard pile. Therefore, Resurrected Revenant gets its effect off and is functioning and doing the things it wants to do, but then your character can no longer do any of the things it wants to do other than exist as a character. Commensalism, the second-hand offense. It's a toxic relationship where one card is going to lose benefit while the other card is just relatively unaffected, but the one card loses benefit purely by the second card existing. An example of a toxic relationship can be found between the asset Pit and any card with a save keyword, something like Heavenly Dance. Pit says while this card's ready, attacks lose save and cannot gain keywords or have their keyword ratings increased. It does have the E-commit ability so that it is no longer ready. However, the save keyword is a static and it loses that effect as soon as it enters the card pool. Therefore, it can't just gain that effect back after the fact that Pit gets played. So whatever your first attack is that you play that time that has safe on it, it's just going to lose it. So in this relationship, Pit's relatively unaffected by the fact that the attack exists, but the attack being played loses a keyword and therefore becomes a less effective attack overall. The same thing can kind of be said about any card that's going to have a blanket negative effect on the game. So you just have to kind of look out for if your deck is going to be affected by that or not, because that card's going to create a toxic relationship with other cards that need to use that function. Commensalism, it's growth by association, or the mooch relationship. It's where one card is gaining a benefit and the other card's really not getting anything in return. But that one card is gaining a benefit purely by that second card just existing. So a simple example of a mooch relationship can be found between a card like Let's Cut Loose and pretty much any attack that has an enhanced sequence. Let's Cut Loose wants to remove itself so that you can either tutor a foundation and or bring your foundation from your card pool down and draw a card. The attack itself doesn't benefit at all from Let's Cut Loose being played upon it, but Let's Cut Loose uses the attack in order to produce its function. Aside from the example that I just showed, you can find commensalism all over the place in UVS. Most of the time, it's hidden in responses. Those responses will often look for certain trigger windows that are created by other cards being played, and then they can produce their effects after that. It's just important to understand that if you have these mooch cards that need certain other cards to be played or other effects to happen before they can do what they want to do, that you just have the ability to control either when these cards are played or when those effects are going to occur, so that you can make sure that your mooch cards always get to do what they want to do as well and can generate their effects. Mutualism, everybody wins, a cooperative relationship. In this relationship, two cards both benefit from the existence of each other. One card directly will gain effects because the other card exists, and that other card will directly gain effects or abilities or function because that first card exists. This is the best interaction to have, and you should be seeking it out anywhere possible. A great example of a mutually beneficial relationship can be found between Scarlet Meteor and Caden's Blindfold, a combination that's currently running rampant in the retro format. Scarlet Meteor says, E, destroy one foundation, add one asset or foundation from your discard pile to your staging area, which means you can then go get Caden's Blindfold, which says form, destroy this asset to add a powerful attack from your card pool back to your hand, which Scarlet Meteor is a powerful attack, so you can then destroy the Cadence to get back the Scarlet Meteor, then you can play the Scarlet Meteor to get back the Cadence Blindfold, and vice versa. Both cards get to use their function, and both of them benefit from the existence of the other. This doesn't talk about the relationship that Scarlet Meteor has with the rest of the foundations in your staging area, just the relationship between the two of them, which is mutually beneficial. I also want to talk quickly about what is probably the most common kind of mutualism you'll find in a game of UVS, which is between any foundation that has an enhanced response or form that's going to directly upgrade any attacks or the current attack that you are playing. By the attack existing, it allows that foundation to either generate its effects or to do what it wants to do, and by that foundation creating those effects, the attack then becomes a better attack. Either you're giving it more speed, more damage, you're giving it effects, whatever you're going to do to it. It is becoming better at doing its job, and the foundation gets to do its job, so both cards get to benefit from that relationship. Competition, the double negative. The competitive relationship. In this relationship, two cards are vying for the same third-party resource. This creates a double negative in the fact that as long as one card is being fed, the other card has less of a resource to access. And no matter which card's coming out on top, one of them is going to start struggling. It also creates a situation where if that third-party resource dries up, both cards are now going to struggle to find any function. There is, however, a kind of reverse to that, where if there's a situation where the resource pool is just infinite or beyond the capacity of the two cards to consume, then both cards can maintain their full function. A simple example of this can be found between Guardian's Final Duty and Genkai's Training, with both cards trying to vie for the momentum resource in order to activate their effects. This creates a situation where if one of the cards is being fed, that means you're directly taking resources away from the other, and then if that card's being fed, you're taking resources away from the first card again. This does create kind of a weird situation where if you have the ability to constantly feed both cards, then both cards can maintain their operation. But regardless of how you look at it from outside perspective, the relationship between these two cards is always going to be competing with each other for those same resources. And that's something you just need to consider when you're putting in multiple cards that use the same resource, whether that resource is committing foundations in your staging area, your own vitality, flipping foundations over in your staging area, or momentum like in this example, and there's more. But just be mindful of oversaturating the cards that are trying to vie for the same resource within your deck's ecosystem. A competitive relationship is kind of tricky because in the card game it doesn't quite work out the same way that it does in a natural ecology, because we can be presented with these situations where we have enough resources for both cards in order to fulfill their function for the entirety of the game. And it's just something you need to be aware of as you're building your deck or even seeing how your deck functions. Just being aware that understanding how much of that resource you can produce and how many cards of that competitive relationship it can support. And just understanding that relationship exists, and it's something you need to keep track of. And for those of you who just like very clear, simple charts of review, here it all is. Predation, where one wins and one loses. Mutualism, where everybody wins. Commensalism, which is growth by association. Commensalism, second-hand offense. And then competition, where two cards are vying for that same resource, the double negative. Okay, so there it is. That's kind of the whole presentation. We didn't really touch on how independent card value works, or on what kind of parameters those kind of things could be, or on how single cards function, whether or not a card just does its effect and destroys itself or removes itself, or a card can repeatedly produce an effect. We didn't really cover that. We'll talk about that later on. But hopefully this helps you in your deck building so that you understand how cards interact with each other a little bit better, and it puts it in a language that might be easier for you to understand. So if you found this informative, please let other people know. Really, we're just here trying to spread that information and that knowledge around. And yeah, tune in next time. This was Toy. It's been great talking to you. I'll see you next time.